Turning from mortals, ordinary and extraordinary, to the immortal gods, it would seem that the netherworld would be the last place to look for their undying presence. Nevertheless, we find quite a number of deities there, and while some seem to belong there, as it were, others were originally sky gods condemned to the netherworld by the Sumerian mythographers as a result of theological speculation and invention. As of today, however, only a few of the relevant myths have been recovered, and except for one, all concern the ambitious Inanna and her unfortunate spouse Dumuzi. See pages 153 through 60. The one exception is the myth Enlil and Ninlil, birth of the moon god, which tells how Enlil himself, the most powerful of the Sumerian gods and the chief of the Sumerian pantheon, was banished to the netherworld and followed thither by his wife, Ninlil. This myth is also significant as the sole source for the Sumerian belief that there was a man-devouring river which had to be crossed by the dead, as well as a boatman, who ferried the dead across to their destination, a belief prevalent throughout the ancient Near Eastern and Mediterranean world. A highly revealing myth relating to death and the netherworld is Inanna's descent to the netherworld, which is now available almost in its entirety. According to this poem, the netherworld is a place to which one descends and from which one ascends, presumably through an opening or a gate situated in Erech. Although this is nowhere explicitly stated, in the netherworld there is a place described as the Lapis Lazuli Mountain, whose locked and bolted gates are guarded by gatekeepers under the supervision of Neti, their chief. The netherworld is governed by divine regulations and rules, among which one of the most important seems to be that its denizens must be stark naked. Another rule is one that proved fatal to Dumuzi, was that no one, once in the netherworld, not even a deity, could reascend to the world above unless a substitute had been found to take his place. Thus, for example, it was to make sure that Inanna, who had been revived through the clever efforts of Enki, would provide a suitable surrogate to take her place, that the seven Galas struck her side until she turned over Dumuzi to them. Turning from royalty to more ordinary mortals, we learn quite a number of hitherto unknown details about the Sumerian netherworld from the two dirges on the Pushkin Museum tablet. On this tablet, we read for the first time that the Sumerian thinkers held the view that the sun, after setting, continued its journey through the netherworld at night, turning its night into day, and that the moon spent its day of rest, that is, the last day of each month, in the netherworld. We learn, too, that there was a judgment of the dead by the sun god, Utu, and that the moon god, Nana, decreed the fate of the dead. In the netherworld, according to the tablet, there could be found bread-eating heroes and drinkers who satisfy the thirst of the dead with fresh water. We learn, too, that the gods of the netherworld can be called upon to utter prayers for the dead, that the personal god of the deceased and his city's god were invoked in his behalf, and that the welfare of the family of the deceased was by no means overlooked in the funerary prayers. The Sumerian document which provides the most detailed information about the netherworld and the life going on within its confines is the poem Gildamesh and Kadu and the Netherworld. According to this composition, which characterizes the netherworld euphemistically as the Great Dwelling, there was an opening of some sort in Erech that led down to the world of the dead, through which such wooden objects as the puka and the miku could fall, and into which a hand and foot could be placed. There was also a gate in Erech, in front of which one could sit down, and through which a mortal, at least if he was a hero like Enkidu, might descend to the netherworld. Although just how this descent took place is not made clear. There were certain taboos, however, which, according to the author of the poem, anyone wishing to descend to the netherworld must be aware of violating. He must not wear clean clothes, anoint himself with good oil, carry a weapon or staff, wear sandals, make a noise, or behave normally toward the members of his family. If he broke any of those taboos, he would be surrounded by the stewards and by the shades inhabiting the lower regions, and would be held fast by the outcry of the netherworld. Once seized by this outcry, it was impossible for a mortal to reascend to the earth unless one or another of the gods intervened on his behalf. In the case of Enkidu, it was Enki who came to his rescue, and he had Utu open the oblal of the netherworld, and Enkidu reascended to the earth, seemingly in the flesh rather than as a ghost. According to the poem, a heartbreaking colloquy between Gilgamesh and Enkidu followed, in which the latter is purported to have described the state of the dead, or rather of a few selected categories of the dead. YouTube.com/C/MagicJesus